As an author, advocate, Nigerian, immigrant, mother, daughter, teacher, sister, and wife, Chimamanda Adichie uses the power of her experience and storytelling to change the world. She's recognized globally as a transformational storytelling who brings diversity, complexity, and humanity to her work. She was recently awarded the prestigious Pen Pinter Prize, which is presented annually to writers from the UK, Ireland, or the Commonwealth, who has a fierce intellectual determination to define the truth of our lives and our societies. Adichie's 6 books have been met with critical acclaim, earning her a MacArthur Fellowship and a place on some impressive lists. One was the Time magazine 100 Most Influential People, and the Fortune magazine Top 50 World Leaders. Her 2009 TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story, is one of the most viewed TED Talks of all time, and an example of how she leverages her platform to advocate for equality and human rights. We are particularly inspired by her dedicated support for women and refugees and the way she embodies Action Against Hunger's vision. We do recognize that Action Against Hunger, that Chimamanda Adichie has a powerful voice that is heard around the world. Together, our voices amplifies the issue of world hunger and help advocate for greater equality and dignity for all. We are thrilled to have her with us here tonight as a partner in this fight. I'm a very avid reader of her books as well. So I'm particularly honored to welcome to the stage the 2018 Action Against Hunger Humanitarian Award recipient, Chimamanda Adichie.
Hello, good evening. I want to start by asking, how old did you say that child was? Fox, when I was your age, I was not doing anything useful in the world. And I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I'm going to show her your speech because I'm going to say to her, you better be like him. Thank you. Thank you, you're such an inspiration. You're a reason to hope. I'm very honored to be here, to receive this recognition. I told my parents that I was being honored, and my father is 86, my mother is 76, and one of the things that still makes me happiest is seeing the pride in their eyes. And so they thought that I was being honored by a literary thing or a university, but I said no, it's Action Against Hunger. And I gave them a bit of information to read. And they read it together. My parents have been married for more than 50 years, and they've been good friends with moments of bickering for that long. And they read this information about Action Against Hunger, and then I just remember their faces becoming sober, and they said, it is organizations like this one that kept us alive in 1969. My father is a professor of statistics. My mother is a university administrator. My mother retired as the first woman to head the non-academic section of the University of Nigeria, of which I'm very proud. And in 1965, and I have to say that Fox was very right about always start by thanking your mother. In 1965, my parents had just returned to Nigeria from the US, where my father had received his PhD at Berkeley, and where my mother had started her undergrad education. It was a very heady and exciting time across the continent of Africa. Colonialism had ended. Independence was in the air. My father wanted to go back and join all the other young Africans who were educated and who wanted to help build their countries. So they went back to Nigeria. My father took a job as a lecturer. My mother enrolled to finish her education. They had a nice house on the university campus. They had a car, they had a cook, they had 2 daughters, my sisters. They had cocktails at the staff club in the evenings with their friends. And then one day, in 1966, it changed very suddenly. The Nigeria-Biafra War started. My father tells a story about how they all knew that the war had started, but they didn't think it would really affect them, and they thought it would end really quickly. But one day they heard a sound of shelling very close to the campus, and they had to leave that day. They left almost everything they owned behind, and suddenly they became refugees. My parents were refugees for 3 years. They were displaced inside their own country. They depended on the humanitarianism of organizations and of individuals. They survived because of humanitarianism. And by the time I was born in 1977, they had picked their lives back together. But it's always struck me that I might not be here had humanitarian organizations not existed and not come to Nigeria in 1969. And so my parents having that sober look on their face when I told them about this is because of that. And it's also why I'm deeply honored to be here, and really why I came. I've been reading and loving books my entire life. And when I was growing up, I read books from all over the world. I read Russian novels. I read books about Indian history. I read everything. And I like to think of literature as my religion. I learn from literature. And one of the things that I've learned from literature is that it doesn't matter where we come from. It doesn't matter what we look like. There's a fundamental common humanity that we share. And so I would read this book set in Russia, for example, and I wouldn't quite understand every specific thing, but I got the larger human story. So I might not have known exactly what a samovar was, but I cried when the love affair went wrong. And so it's become important for me to talk about literature as religion, as a learning tool, and for a way of reminding ourselves that despite it all, there's a common humanity that we share, that we're all common members of this human family. We're all common members of the human family, but we're not always equal members of the human family. And of course, I'm talking about women. We live in a world in which women today all over the world are still not given the full human dignity. Women are not allowed opportunities. They're not allowed their dreams. They're not allowed to make decisions about their own lives. And I think it's important to change that. And we know that And we know that when we change that, when we give women access to the tools that they need to make choices about their own lives, that invariably families will thrive. I want to say thank you to everyone here who has donated to Action Against Hunger. I hope you'll be writing many big checks later today, or small checks. Any check is fine. But sorry, I did actually mean to be proper and formal, but I can't help myself. And so I want to say thank you to people here who've donated, because one of the things that I find myself thinking about a lot, especially in the past year, I live part of the time in the US and the rest of the time in Nigeria, and there's a lot about what's going on in the world politically that makes me sometimes come close to the border of despair. But I also remind myself that I cannot afford despair. We cannot afford despair, because I think while there is so much in the world that can make one unhappy and worried, it's also important to remember that there's so much kindness still in the world. There's so much generosity. There are people doing wonderful things. And an example of that is being here today and being reminded that there are human beings who understand that we are all better off if our fellow human beings are better off. Thank you for this honor.
I want to thank Chimamanda Adichie for those thoughtful remarks and for serving as an inspiring example of the power of a vision and a voice for change. And I'm very honored to present you with our Action Against Hunger Humanitarian Award 2018. So thanks a lot. Let's read that.